Before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to the Global War Archive channel and share this video with anyone who takes history seriously, because what we are about to cover is not trivia, not myth, and not romanticized nonsense. This is one of the most effective material technologies of the medieval world, a method so successful that it quietly outperformed entire civilizations and still has lessons for modern survivalists, shipbuilders, and historians today. When people talk about Viking superiority, they usually point to axes, longships, or battle tactics. That misses the real story. The Vikings' greatest advantage was not how they fought, but how they built. They discovered a way to make wood resist rot, insects, salt water, and time itself without chemicals, without metal reinforcement, and without written engineering manuals. This is why Viking ships crossed the North Atlantic repeatedly, why wooden structures survived brutal Scandinavian winters, and why some Viking-era timber still shows structural integrity 1,000 years later. If you care about ancient technology, long-term survival, or how pre-industrial societies solved problems we still struggle with, this is knowledge worth your attention. The technique is known today as radial splitting combined with natural resin saturation, though the Vikings never named it formally. Instead of sawing logs into planks, the Vikings split trees along their natural grain using wedges and mallets. This preserved the full length of the wood fibers rather than cutting across them. When you saw wood, you sever capillaries that carry sap and moisture, creating pathways for rot and fungal invasion. When you split wood along the grain, those fibers remain intact, dramatically increasing strength and longevity. This method was paired with deliberate tree selection. Vikings favored slow-growing pine, oak, and spruce, harvested from cold climates where tight growth rings created dense, resilient timber. Trees were often felled in winter when sap content was lowest, further reducing moisture retention and decay risk. The wood was then seasoned naturally, sometimes for years exposed to wind and smoke rather than sealed away. Nowhere is this technique better documented than in Viking shipbuilding. You see, longships were not just fast, they were in fact quite flexible. By splitting planks radially, builders created boards that could bend slightly with the waves rather than cracking under stress. This flexibility allowed these ships to survive open ocean crossings that destroyed heavier, rigid vessels from other cultures. Archaeological finds such as the Oseberg ship and the Gokstad ship show hull planks that retained integrity despite centuries underground. The wood was not preserved by accident, no. Resin-rich pine was intentionally used in exposed areas, while oak reinforced keels and ribs. Resin acted as a natural antifungal and water repellent, sealing microfractures without making the wood brittle. The Vikings did not use preservatives in the modern sense, but they understood material behavior intimately. Pine tar, produced by slow-burning resinous wood in oxygen-poor pits, was applied repeatedly to hulls, posts, and beams. This tar penetrated intact wood fibers far more effectively than it would sawn lumber. Smoke curing further inhibited insect activity and microbial growth. This approach created wood that aged rather than failed. Instead of rotting suddenly, Viking timber slowly hardened over time, becoming more resistant as resins polymerized within the grain. This is why Viking structures required maintenance rather than replacement, a critical distinction in survival-based societies. This was not limited to ships. Homes, storage sheds, tool handles, weapon shafts, and even agricultural equipment used the same principles. Upright posts were split rather than sawn. Roof beams were chosen from naturally curved trunks to preserve fiber continuity. Even simple objects like bowls and chests were carved, following grain direction to prevent cracking. For modern survivalists, the application is straightforward. When building shelters, fences, or tools from raw timber, split wood whenever possible. choose winter-harvested trees, season them in open air, and apply natural resins or oils rather than synthetic sealants. This dramatically increases lifespan without requiring industrial processing. You see, many medieval cultures had access to similar forests, yet they relied heavily on sawn lumber. Now, this approach certainly increased production speed, but it came at a cost. Sawn planks, well, they rot faster, warp unpredictably, and can fail catastrophically under stress. The Vikings, however, accepted slower production in exchange for reliability. It was a trade-off that made perfect sense in harsh environments where replacement was costly or, quite frankly, impossible. This difference really explains why Viking ships outperformed heavier European vessels for centuries. It's also why Norse settlements endured in places like Iceland and Greenland, even under the most extreme conditions. Now, this was not accidental craftsmanship. It actually reflects a deep understanding of material science developed through observation, failure, and the transfer of knowledge across generations. Vikings were not just reckless raiders relying on brute force. They were, in fact, engineers operating within ecological limits, maximizing durability with minimal resources. So, modern experimental archaeology has actually confirmed that radially split planks outperform sawn boards in tensile strength, water resistance, and fatigue tolerance. The science really just supports what the Vikings already knew through practice. In an era of disposable materials and chemical dependency, Viking woodcraft offers an alternative philosophy: build less, build better, and understand the material instead of forcing it into compliance. Whether you are restoring historical structures, building off-grid shelters, or studying ancient logistics, this technique remains relevant. It also reframes how we evaluate technological progress. Innovation is not always about complexity. Sometimes it is about restraint, patience, and alignment with natural systems. The Viking wood trick endures because it respects how wood wants to behave. It does not fight nature, it cooperates with it. That mindset allowed a relatively small population to dominate trade routes, explore unknown oceans, and survive in environments others abandoned. If you found value in this deep dive into Viking materials science, subscribe to Global War Archive, share this with fellow historians and survivalists, and help keep serious historical knowledge alive. This channel exists to preserve the lessons history already paid for in blood, labor, and time.